Backstage, the air was thick with anticipation. The four girls, Nelly, Charlotte, Matilda, and Melody Rose, sat close together, holding hands as though clinging to each other for strength. Around them, the bustle of stagehands and producers hummed like distant thunder, but inside their little circle, time slowed. Nelly, the oldest of the group, brushed a stray strand of hair from her face. Her eyes were sharp but soft, glowing with both leadership and vulnerability. She had always been the big sister, the one who steadied the nerves of the others. But tonight, her heart pounded in her chest. She knew the weight of the song they had chosen, Forever Young. It wasn't just a ballad, it was a promise, a prayer, a dream pressed into melody. Charlotte, with her quiet grace, leaned her head on Nelly's shoulder. She had lost her grandfather just months before, and the song had been his favorite. When she sang it during rehearsals, her voice carried a trembling kind of beauty, like crystal that might shatter at any second but instead shimmered with light. Matilda, always full of restless energy, drummed her fingers nervously on her knees. She wanted to get everything right. She wanted the harmonies to soar and their voices to intertwine like threads of gold. She was the perfectionist, the one who rehearsed long after the others had gone home. But deep down, what she wanted most was not perfection, it was connection. And then there was Melody Rose, the youngest. Her name suited her. Her voice was pure, angelic, untouched by the weight of years. She was wide-eyed, not quite able to process the enormity of the stage they were about to step onto, but her innocence gave the group a kind of light they didn't even know they carried. The producer signaled them, it was almost time. The girls stood, their hands still linked. For a moment, they just looked at each other. No words. Just silent understanding. This wasn't just a performance. This was their chance to leave something behind. The stage lights dimmed, the audience hushed, and a single spotlight bathed the four girls in golden light. They looked small on the massive stage, but the way they stood together made them seem like one soul in four bodies. The opening chords of Forever Young floated into the air, delicate and haunting. Nelly stepped forward first, her voice deep and steady, carrying the weight of someone who had lived more than her years. It set the foundation, grounding the song in something raw and human. Then Charlotte's voice slipped in, fragile and trembling at first, but soon gaining strength. She poured her grief into every syllable, her eyes glistening as though her grandfather's spirit were sitting in the front row, smiling proudly at her. The coaches leaned in, already captivated by the honesty of her delivery. Matilda followed, her voice clear and strong, filling the spaces between the others like sunlight through cracks. She sang not with sorrow but with determination, a fierce desire to carve something unforgettable into the hearts of everyone listening. And then, Melody Rose. Her soft, angelic tones floated over the harmonies, almost too pure to belong to this world. The audience gasped audibly. It was as though a child's prayer had found its way into music, untainted, shimmering. Together, their voices wove a tapestry of sound. Every harmony was carefully chosen, every blending of tone intentional. But it wasn't just technical. It was emotional alchemy. Their differences didn't clash, they completed each other. The song became more than Alphaville's words, it became their story. By the second chorus, something shifted. It was no longer a performance, it was a confession. Charlotte's voice cracked on a line, and for a second, it felt like she might break down. But instead of faltering, Nelly reached out, laying a hand gently on her shoulder, and the gesture gave her strength. The audience noticed. Tears welled in the eyes of strangers who, in that instant, understood something deeply human, that grief shared is grief halved, and love multiplies when given away. The harmonies swelled, rising higher and higher until they weren't just singing to the audience, they were singing to the universe, to every child who wanted to stay innocent, to every adult who longed to return to the days of laughter without fear. Matilda's voice soared in the bridge, fearless and commanding, before dissolving back into the group harmony. The girls weren't competing, they were complementing, lifting each other up, carrying one another like sisters on a long road. Melody Rose closed her eyes as she sang her solo, her hands clasped at her chest, as if she was praying the words rather than performing them. Her voice was so fragile, so impossibly tender, that the entire hall seemed to hold its breath. Coaches and audience alike felt their hearts squeeze inside their chests. By the final chorus, the audience was no longer just listening, they were living the song. A sea of swaying hands rose into the air, phones forgotten, as if no one wanted to break the spell by recording it. The girls had created something unrepeatable, something sacred. The last note rang out, a shimmering harmony that seemed to hang suspended in the air. Then, silence. For a heartbeat, the world was still. Even the judges didn't move. The quiet was deafening, filled with the weight of what had just been witnessed. The girls stood, slightly trembling, their hands still linked. Nelly's chin quivered. Charlotte's cheeks were wet. Matilda's chest heaved with the effort of holding herself together. Melody Rose blinked wide eyes at the crowd, not fully understanding why her throat ached with unspoken tears. And then it came, the thunder. The audience erupted into applause, cheers, and standing ovations. The sound was deafening, shaking the walls, echoing into eternity. It wasn't polite applause. It wasn't automatic. It was primal, roaring, unstoppable. The coaches stood, one by one, clapping with tears streaking their faces. One of them pressed their hand over their heart, as if trying to steady it. Another mouthed the words, "Unbelievable," again and again. Backstage, parents and mentors cried openly. Producers wiped their eyes, forgetting for a moment that they were at work. Something had happened here, something that went beyond talent shows and television. For children had, for a fleeting 5 minutes, reminded the world of its own soul. When the applause finally quieted, the girls were still on stage, dazed, holding hands. The coaches began to speak, their voices shaking with emotion. They spoke not just about pitch, or control, or harmonies, but about truth. About how rare it was to see not just performers, but messengers. Nelly bowed her head, overwhelmed. Charlotte smiled through tears, whispering softly, "He heard me." Matilda exhaled in relief, finally releasing the tension she'd carried for weeks. Melody Rose just looked out into the sea of faces, her small hands clutching the microphone like it was a lifeline. When they walked off stage, something had shifted inside them. They weren't just 4 girls anymore. They were sisters, bound not by blood but by a song. A song that would outlive the moment, replayed on screens, remembered in hearts, carried like a flame. And somewhere, in the quiet corners of the world, people would hear their version of Forever Young and cry, not just for what they lost, but for what they still carried within, the dream of staying forever young in spirit, in hope, in love. The girls didn't need to win the competition. In that performance, they had already won something greater, immortality. Because music, when it's sung with truth, never dies.